I'm Marnie, and for those of you who don't know me, thanks for coming, and it's great to have you here. And I will present my capstone project, Wayfind. So I've always loved the outdoors my whole life, but in my adult life, I've really come to love hiking and backpacking, especially. It's taught me joy, courage, self-sufficiency, focus. It's brought me closer in my relationships with people. And I've always thought if everyone could have a closer relationship with the outdoors, we might have a healthier and more equitable communities around the world. So that brings me to the idea for this project. In experimental interaction this past spring, same class that Clarissa's project was a jumping off point for as well, we were tasked to come up with a future interaction to solve an existing problem. The future part meant that it didn't technically have to work. It was about imagining what could be possible technologically. At the same time, when I was thinking about what that might be, I took a weekend trip up to Grand Marais, Minnesota with my dad in March. On one of the days, we went for a hike on the shores of Lake Superior, and it had just snowed. The ground was covered, and most of the trail was clear to us because of other hikers' footprints that had already marked the way. But in a few instances, it took several minutes for us to piece together the continuation of that trail. We were never truly worried. We had the lake as a reference point and could have retraced our steps, but it could have been more difficult in a different scenario, like if it had been dark out, if we didn't have the lake to reference, that kind of thing. And this led to an idea. What if difficulty seeing a trail in real life could be avoided? Could a digital trail integrated with and overlaid on one's real environment using augmented reality allow the trail to be seen at any time and in any condition? This was my personal motivation and jumping off point, but I wanted to see if there could be a broader use or need for this idea, so I started with some research. One, I wanted to learn about what issues in public lands and trail maintenance existed, and two, if my idea might fit in the range of solutions to said issues. Through my research, I came to the conclusion that there might be a place for a trail safety and preparedness app, and that it could specifically help to address two areas. The first area I labeled as practical. Across the US, public lands are facing a lot of problems. There have been huge surges in attendance, especially with the pandemic, with everyone wanting to get outside and having more free time to do that. While at the same time, federal and state funding to manage these lands has been decreasing over decades, creating a huge trail maintenance backlog. At the beginning of 2022, an estimated $21.8 billion in deferred maintenance costs existed across the national park system. This means that $21.8 billion is needed in repairs and maintenance for things like trails, campgrounds, buildings, and water, sewer, and electrical systems. Large chunks of budgets have also been shifted to pay for wildfires in the West, making this a climate change issue as well. With these funding cuts and increased needs and a huge increase in attendance in public lands, there's been a great stress placed on resources, operations, infrastructure, and staff. These issues and their potential consequences made me think that there could be a place for my project. There's a need for greater preparedness and education on the physical trail, whether it be the concern of getting lost, the need to be safe on poorly maintained trails, or selecting the right hike for one's needs and abilities. The second issue identified was less about the physical realities of trails, but perception of outdoor experiences. In my research, I found a talked about difference between people who grew up with outdoor experiences and people who did not. This can happen for many reasons. Some cultures don't engage with the outdoors as much as others. Maybe they live in urban areas with less access to natural spaces. Perhaps they don't know what to expect or how to prepare, or just generally don't think the outdoors is for them. And perhaps they have fears concerning safety and security in the outdoors linked to racism or ableism. I read about things like the adventure or nature gap, in which racial minorities have been excluded from environmental narratives and are less likely to engage in nature-based outdoor activities as a result. These are well documented. For example, the National Park Service reports people of color made up 20% of domestic national park visitors in the last year, despite 40% of the US population being people of color. My project does not purport to solve the racist underpinnings of America, discriminatory underpinnings in America that have led to these barriers of access and fears of the outdoors. These fears should definitely be taken seriously and might never be unfounded. But supporting the novice outdoors person is one piece in that direction. There are many programs and organizations created for this purpose. Outdoor camps for urban or low-income kids, for example, or affinity groups like Black people who hike that empower, educate, and re-engage people with the outdoors. I feel that my project could have a place in these missions by helping the newer, inexperienced hiker know what to expect and providing information they may not have. It could increase confidence in their ability to get outdoors. So these two areas of preparedness and safety, the practical concern of maintenance and funding, and the perceptual concern of familiarity and experience, were areas that I thought my project idea could address. It could provide assurance and build confidence on the trail. Thus, my project was conceived. Wayfind is a wayfinding service and trail preparedness mobile app that supports a safe and immersive outdoor experience designed to assist trailgoers in gaining confidence in and access to natural spaces. So first, before I present my project, I'll talk a little bit about my process. You just heard about some of my research, but I also looked at what equivalent services and apps already existed. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel or create something that already existed. I found there was some overlap, but I also found that there were some unique aspects to what I was planning. So I continued on. The next phase was the planning and ideation stage. I decided that my final deliverable would be a printed brand guide and an app prototype that would operationalize that brand. I was mainly asking about or thinking about what features and services in an app that could help alleviate concerns around trail safety and comfort, and asking how could I create an app both through function and design that didn't center technology, but instead allowed for greater immersion. If the whole point was to get people off their phones and feel more confident in the environment, how could a literal phone help them do this? I didn't want this project to become yet another way for people to have their noses stuck in their phone and not in their environment. So my next step in the process was doing more hiking. I chose the Chippewa Moraine State Recreation Area in Chippewa County, Wisconsin, as a testing site to create my prototype off of. I've camped and hiked here before, and it's on the 1,200-mile long Ice Age trail that spans Wisconsin. With my dad's help, as you can see here, we headed to the trail. We collected some material for my prototype, and then also I went in asking the question, what can I learn here that hiking on a trail, what questions can I consider that hiking on a trail will raise that I haven't thought about? I also met Roy, who you can see pictured in the middle. He's worked at this information center for over 30 years, and I told him about my idea. He liked it because based on his experience, and he provided me some examples, he's had experiences with hikers veering off path, going wrong directions because they don't always pay attention to where they are or signage. He said, quote, "If hikers aren't paying attention, it doesn't matter how well marked things are." Next, I looked at branding. From the beginning, I wanted the Wayfind brand to feel accessible, joyful, uncomplicated, easy. I wanted to keep people immersed in the trail experience, not take them out of it. And I knew I wanted some illustrated components to keep it organic and fun. And also, I just like to illustrate. However, as I continued to iterate using Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop, I figured out that it was important to balance this fun, organic part with a need to inspire a complete trust in Wayfind's technology and expertise. If safety was an important integral part of the service, that needed to be communicated throughout the brand as well. It couldn't be fun to the point of informal or casual because that would do the opposite. So my challenge was to find balances: expert and trustworthy, but not pretentious or exclusive, warm, but not informal, clear, but not clinical, excited, but calm. Overall, I wanted to reflect the joy, familiarity, and personality of Wayfind as a brand, while equally communicating the credibility and expertise of Wayfind as a service. Next, I prototyped. I built high fidelity clickable prototypes in Figma, and I wireframed my primary workflows, as you can see here. Mainly, I was thinking about what task flows were the most important for me to demonstrate with the prototype, and then what capabilities and features I needed to include to show that Wayfind's UI would work to solve the issues I'd laid out. Basically, I was asking, how could I give this project substance via the prototype? After I prototyped, I received helpful feedback from some friends who hike on the content of the app. This was in no way was it formal user testing, and that's something I'd like to do in the future, but it was helpful to see what they would want to see in an app if they're using it themselves. I asked them about their own outdoor experiences and their thoughts on various functions and options in the app. You can see some of that feedback here. And then lastly, I received a range of feedback from designers with a variety of backgrounds, some of who are in this meeting. Each of them asked really good questions and helped to clarify Wayfind's perimeters, and I'm tremendously thankful for their support. So now, what you've actually been waiting for, I'll share the results of this process. So as I mentioned, the core component of my project is the 32-page brand guide. This encompassed how to talk about Wayfind, how to style and design for Wayfind, and then UI guidelines, user interface guidelines for how to design for web and mobile applications. To inform this content, I determined Wayfind's mission, vision, and brand principles. The mission is to provide safe and immersive outdoor experiences for communities of hikers around the world. And the vision is to be an empowering connector between existing and potential outdoor enthusiasts and the experiences they want to have. And the brand principles, these were a way to help me make informed decisions about the visual style and brand of Wayfind. It also informed me how to talk about the brand once I had determined what these were. So just briefly, I'll summarize. The first principle, safety is our priority, meaning putting safety at the forefront of everything the brand and Wayfind did. So that experience is yours, which means putting the safety first in terms of our work meant that the hiker could put their experience first in an immersive and informative way. Less is more, meaning not stealing attention or distracting, but making the inspiring and the immersive possible through minimally invasive, unassuming support and design. The trail brings us closer together, meaning taking every opportunity to remind the hiker of Wayfind's ability to strengthen the relationships on the trail. Wayfind is about facilitating and inspiring connection. And lastly, the trail is for everyone. Wayfind's approachable, unpretentious, and demonstrating a daily commitment to encouraging and supporting new and first-time users. It was really important to me that competition, finish line, talking about athleticism really didn't exist in the brand, because part of the focus on the hiker meant no gatekeeping of outdoor activities or communities. Now I'm going to walk you through a few examples of the brand guide's content and show you what I'm talking about. So for the Wayfind logo and logotype and logo mark, they're meant to inspire a bold nexus of passion, trust, and belonging. It's an active logo with the arrow as a guide along the trail, guiding the hiker on their way. This guiding arrow motif is repeated through much of Wayfind's branding. The texture adds an organic, fun juxtaposition to the clean use of Helvetica as a classic wayfinding typeface. As you can see here, there are usage guidelines, both clear space, size, and logo misuse guidelines. For the color palette, the palette is meant to reflect a calm, collective experience in its cool colors, and then a bright, bold individualism in its warm colors. There are varying tints and shades available to use. It was important, though, I noted that the green should not be used in an olive shade, a darker shade too much, so that it wouldn't appear muddy or outdated. And then because I wanted the colors to feel light, clean, and simple. I also added guidelines for contrast ratios, as it was important that everything was readable in Wayfind's digital work. For my typography, this was again an opportunity to find balance between expertise and authenticity. Helvetica's clean, ubiquitous nature, synonymous with reliable transportation services and signage, paired with the softer flourishes of Enriqueta, made for a timeless combination that communicated both reliability and personality while still being readable. And then lastly, I created a set of custom icons. This was important because I wanted a way to visually communicate repetitive concepts in an interesting and fun way. They're simple and neutral. They use an overall consistent stroke weight on a pixel grid while maintaining personality through texture, micro stroke variations, and color. The icons are meant to be fun and informative, and above all, useful. And now I'll share the prototype. Once the brand was underway, it was time to operationalize those ideas and assets I had created. What did Wayfind look like now as a service? Using Figma, I built a clickable prototype with a couple workflows. My first workflow focused on a new user's inaugural experience, asking the question, what does a hiker encounter on their first time opening and using the app? I wanted to place an emphasis on welcomingness and accessibility. So this intro sequence needed to grab a user's attention, make them feel welcome no matter their experience and motivation, and make them feel like downloading the app was a good idea. You can see here the sign-in screen options that you might see, and then a loader that would maybe load as you open the app first. After the login screen is the question sequence meant to communicate to the hiker that Wayfind cares about creating an experience that fits their needs, goals, and experience level. This data would then be used to populate suggested routes and experiences later on in the app. The final part of the introduction sequence was intended to give a brief and simple overview of what Wayfind offers. Rather than a complex introduction with different features and interfaces more specifically, I opted to just lightly pique the interest of the hiker and let them know how Wayfind might engage them in the future. I thought this was a good opportunity to do like a soft introduction to Wayfind's voice and values and design. The second workflow I worked on after that introduction asked and answered the question, what does it look like when a user wants to hike a trail? So this is the main page. Once the hiker is logged in, their default view is a map. The page toggles between map and trail views. The trail view shows the augmented reality interactions and updates that occur when the hiker's on the trail, as you can see by the highlighted yellow trail there. Other features are a compass and a floating action button on the bottom right that opens to the main menu, and that features items like weather, sunset time, a search bar, ability to track your hike, kind of like you would find in Strava or AllTrails, and then a safety and help button as well. Next, we have the search function, which supports a user who'd like to research different hike possibilities, search trails in certain areas, or just browse what's in the area. As you can see, The filtering options mean that the hiker can specify exactly what they're looking for, such as how long of a hike, what type of route, and what amenities are on the way. So for example, I might want to find routes that are wheelchair accessible, kid-friendly, and have readily accessible bathrooms. Or maybe I just want to find a scenic view, or maybe I just want to get off the paved trail, that kind of thing. The hiker can also sort search results by different criteria, including my preferences, which references the questions asked at the start of the app about what a hiker is interested in. Here, once searched, the hiker can learn about the details of the hike, such as permitting and parking, trail condition, hours, amenities, recreational activities, and more. They can also view user-sourced images and updates. The hiker then has the option to select Start Hike, which prompts them to decide if they'd like to track or record their hike, and then illuminates the path forward once on the trail. Once on the trail, the hiker has the ability to see the trail highlighted using augmented reality at all times. You can imagine how it might be difficult to see in certain circumstances, such as in the snow or at night in the dark, or perhaps in bad weather. Another scenario might be you're approaching a junction and you don't know which path to necessarily take, and easily being able to toggle between options and receive information about where each path goes. Another part of Wayfind is its tiered alert system. Color and shape coded by level of importance, the app will alert the hiker for various reasons. Alarms are for imminent safety concerns, advisories are for directional corrections and changes in trail, and notifications are non-threatening regulatory trail or amenity items. Included in the alert system would be an ability to contact emergency personnel. So this system is especially important because the hiker can trust the app to alert them of important items, and therefore their app doesn't have to be out at all times to get full benefits of the app. The phone would send push and in-app notifications regarding things like trail quality, severe weather, when it's time to head back before dark, veering off trail, directions to get back to trail, and more. So your phone doesn't need to be out at all times to get those benefits. And this is what definitely sets Wayfind apart from other apps. You can also view user-generated notifications as pins on the map, which brings me to the final function, pinning an update. Something I thought important from the beginning was for updates to be added in real time. Due to what I'd learned in my research about trail maintenance backlogs, I liked the idea of users helping keep the trail safe by letting them know what to expect. The hiker is able to add updates in real time and real location, so when someone hikes afterward, they see updates as needed. Some could be serious, like a rock fall or a bear in the area, but users can also use it to just connect with each other. In this case, the hiker finds a cool looking plant, I found a cool looking plant, and wants to know what it is. Someone could comment on this update with an answer and connect with them post-hike. You can also view these user updates pinned on the map then. In other parts of the app, I intentionally didn't want to include like an obvious social aspect. I didn't want to include any way for people to compare themselves to others, like posting their hikes in a feed, that kind of thing. But this social aspect is based on being good stewards, connecting with each other over common experiences, and keeping each other safe. And that is my project. The brand guide, prototypes, and workflows will now allow me to think about what might come next. In terms of my next steps, I'd love to build out the brand guide further, photography, common components like the arrow motif that you've seen, and then more examples of branding and use. I have some ideas for like cool marketing campaigns. I'd also love to build out an area where the app connects hikers to affinity groups and people like them who are also on the trail. I'd like to build out the prototype further, filling in new workflows. I'd like to connect especially with some more subject matter experts, such as folks who work for outdoor GPS and trail companies, as well as public lands employees, and have them find all of the holes in this idea, because I bet there's a lot. And then lastly, I'd love to test the cultural competency of this idea and app further. So through hiking and this project, I found that my enthusiasm for the outdoors extends beyond my own experience, and that increasing empowerment and access around outdoor experiences is something I'd like to continue working on. I look forward to seeing what else the trail can teach me.